Hello, John Talley here with Partzilla.com, and welcome, well, to my house, more specifically my garage. Somebody at the multimedia team with Partzilla decided it would be a good idea to set up here, since I'm being sequestered, and have me stream live on Facebook and on YouTube. I don't know what they were thinking, but we're going to do it anyway. So I'll be taking your questions as we go along. And maybe I can help some of you out. I know everybody's cooped up like I am. You may be getting a little bit stir crazy. Well, now may be the best time for you to dust off those tools and maybe get that pile in the corner of your garage up and running. And we're here to help you do that. So I'm looking through the news feed right now, and I've got people, calling in from Northern Ireland. How's it going? I can't even pronounce your name. King Bilo. What if I think that's just a handle? So what we're going to do is wait for a question to come along, and I'll do my best to answer it. Peter is telling us thanks. Partzilla is a great resource. Uses it often for part numbers and other fitment issues. Well, we appreciate that. Biggest question of the day, can we come ride at your place? Well, it's a little cramped in here, but sure, come on, why not? All right, we got a question coming in from Bradley. Bradley's saying, John, do you recommend small business shops to get special dealer tools such as the YDT and HDT tools? Well, the real trick on that, especially with proprietary special tools from the different manufacturers, is they really don't want anybody else to have those tools except a certified dealer. And that's why we can't sell them, and honestly, the dealers shouldn't be selling them to you either. That is one of the pitfalls of having a smaller shop, is that sometimes you can't get to every single one of the tools that they have access to as a dealer. So there's really no workaround for that yet, like there is on the automotive side. You've got those different scanners because everything's ODB2 compliant, so you can go in there and basically hook to any car and see what's going on. Now, are we eventually going to go to that on the power sports side? Well, actually, I kind of hope so, but they're going to hold it as close as they can to their vest for as long as they can. For whatever reason, I'm not sure, except to draw people into the dealerships. So we got people calling in from France. Appreciate that. Okay, we've got a question from Bruce. He has an 02 Honda 400EX. It has a tick coming from the top, and I checked the timing chain, and it's very tight. I checked the valves. They were right. What else could it be? Well, it sounds like you were heading in the right direction. I'm a little bit concerned about the timing chain being so tight. It should have just a little bit of play on it. I mean, it shouldn't be like a guitar string or anything like that. And I would say go back, make sure that you've actually got your timing marks correct when you're checking the clearance, because what you're describing really sounds like just a valve clearance issue. And we actually did a video on that particular unit. So if you want to go back and look at the 400EX playlist, I can walk you through how to check the valve lash on that particular unit. We have a comment from XX Rob. He says, all 400EX tick. Mine does too. Well, I imagine a lot of them do tick, and it's harder to get them in to compliance, especially when they get really heated up and that oil thins out. That actually starts to, create more of a clearance. So when you do your adjustment, you may want, when it's cold, you may want to adjust it more toward the low side, or where it's the smallest gap. That way, it's got a little bit of breathing room and won't start to tick quite so early. Now, Raptor Crazy says, my buddy has a 400EX and his doesn't tick. Well, see, he may have it set a little bit tighter than the previous person. All right, we've got a question from JB1KHL. We see tons of your videos and enjoy every one. Thank you. Is there any tips you might give as far as aftermarket tuning? So many people state Can-Am Polaris run very lean from the factory. Is this so? Well, I would tend to agree with that, especially when you start modifying them, because their ECU, unless you're going to go proprietary, is going to try to bring the engine back to what it thinks is correct. So when you start modifying them with higher compression systems and cams and ported heads and different exhaust systems, it's going to think, well, okay, I'm not going to account for all that, and it'll create a lean condition. And we actually ran into that with a 2012 Razor 900 that I actually rebuilt a few years ago. It actually detonated and ate a piston in the process, and that's what made it necessary for me to go in and rebuild it. When that particular unit, we put on a different type control system to piggyback over the ECU, and it did a better job of controlling the air fuel for that particular motor. So my advice is do a little bit of research. There's a lot of different forum boards out there where they have already been down this road, and so there's no reason to reinvent the wheel. So use the forums and these different shops that do a lot of modifications to these various units. Use them as a social network to where you don't have to learn the hard way like this previous Razor 900 owner did. Let's see what else we have here. All right, you've got, let's see, Nissan 350Z has a 2006 YFZ450, and the exhaust is red hot. What can I do to fix that? Well, I've got the same unit, and when we run it at night and run it hard, it'll actually turn the head pipe a bright red. So I wouldn't be very concerned about it. One of the questions I would want to ask you is have you done any modifications to it, as we were just discussing, to make sure you're compensating for the air-fuel ratio. If you have a different air filter, if you have a different exhaust system, if you've replaced the cam or any of that, of course it's going to change the air-fuel and potentially make it run a little too hot. But under normal conditions, yes, it is actually going to glow red because of the type of head pipe that it has. So I wouldn't let that bother me. All right, this is from Andre. I own a Suzuki GSX-R and I feel my front brake lever is kind of spongy. What could be the problem? Well, there could be a couple of different issues. One, how old are your pads? You may want to check to see if the pads have actually glazed over on the rotors. If all that looks good and doesn't have a real shiny look to it, well, then you probably need to take a look at your seals to make sure there is not a problem there. If the seals are not leaking on the caliper and all that looks right, then go up to your master cylinder. At that point, you may be having one of the breakdowns on one of the seals inside of there, and they make rebuild kits for just about every single model, and you'll actually get the spring and the plunger, which is basically just a piston which you're moving inside of the bore. Now, as long as the bore is okay and isn't letting any of the brake fluid escape around the side of that piston, then you should be good to go with just the repair kit. Otherwise, you're going to have to replace the entire thing. One simpler thing I want to mention before you tear into the system, there is a chance that it may just have air in the system, and that's causing it to be really spongy. So open up the top, fill it up, and start flushing it through. And we have several videos on how to do that, and you can actually watch your line. If you connect just a clear line to the bleeder valve down at the caliper, you can actually see if air was in the system, because it will pump it out. So definitely try that first before you start tearing the system apart and rebuilding it. So what else do we have here? Cleaned out the carb really well, but I'm wondering if my fuel mixture screw is way off. Okay. We've got one from Caesar D. He's got a backfire for his 05 Honda Rubicon. He cleaned out the carb really well, but I'm wondering if my fuel mixture screw is off. What is the next way to start from scratch? All right, typically on a Honda, in general, because I don't have the spec book in front of me, you take the air fuel all the way in till it bottoms out, and then back it out 1 3/4 turns, maybe 2 turns completely, and see where that ends it up. If it's still backfiring at that point, you may need to just get a hold of a manual. That way you can make sure exactly how far back you should be moving that air fuel screw. Robert Weston asked me, what is the best advice you could give someone who is a rookie tech? Learn the same way I did. If you work with a master tech, like I did when I was like 15, I was just the shop cleanup boy at the local Honda dealership. I would actually go in and watch him work on Sundays, because he was a master of building drag bikes, and what he was really good at was actually hand porting the heads, and that's where I learned how to do it, was from watching Andy do it on his day off. So in other words, the more you can learn from somebody that's been in the business for a long time, that's gold. That's where, if you've got that available to you, then you need to become friends, wash their car, whatever, to where you can start to draw knowledge from them. Let's see. We got a couple of suggestions as far as different videos. Well, I will definitely go back and be checking these for possible topics. All right, there's one from Tim. He's asking about the Raptor 700 build that we did. He said that I didn't check the cylinder to case depth. Is that something you have to worry about with new cases? It's not something I've ever had to deal with before. When we order the factory parts OEM, you usually don't have to do that. Now, if you were going with a big bore kit and it was made outside of the manufacturer's system, some kits do that. I would definitely check it at that point, because you don't know what tolerances those base plates were actually, or the base of the cylinder, what they were actually milled to. So at that point, yes, you need to check. If it's OEM, there's no need to. You can just go ahead and bolt it straight down, as I did in that particular video. Let's see, what else do we have here? All right, Raptor Crazy asked me, what would you recommend for someone that is looking to buy a used four-wheeler? Are there videos out there on your YouTube channel? I believe that we did. I remember recording one, and actually it was more geared toward buying anything used. One of the things you need to look for. Now, everything that we record, sometimes I don't always know which direction it's heading, but what we'll do is I will find out from our multimedia team what happened to that video, and I've got you marked in my feed here, and we'll send you that information where you can go watch that video of what I would look for if I were walking in to what I would call a Craigslist offering, to make sure that you have a better chance of getting a decent unit. All right, Jim Wilbanks has asked me, he's got a 2014 Polaris Sportsman 850 XP and has oil in the airbox. Well, honestly, John, the first thing I would want to check is it overfilled with oil? Because the way that's happening is it is spitting oil through your breather tube into the airbox, because that's where it expels, excessive gas buildup inside of the engine itself when you have blow-by. That's something else you may need to check if your oil level is correct, is to do a leak down test to make sure that you don't have damaged rings, and then that's making way too much pressure go past the piston and into the crankcase, and then expelling out through your vent into the airbox. So hopefully you just have a little bit too much oil in there, and it's not the latter, which is going to require a new set of piston and rings to be installed. All right. Zach is asking me what can make my brake lever sometimes feel really hard and sometimes really soft on his 2017 African Twin. I'm not super familiar with that model, but as far as your brake lever either coming and going, I would lean toward the brake pads themselves, because your hydraulic really shouldn't change. Your hydraulic property shouldn't change that much, unless you're in race conditions and you're creating so much heat that is actually boiling the brake fluid itself. And I don't think that's going to be the case here. So I would want to know what type of fluid you have in there first, the last time you had flushed it, and then take a look at those pads and make sure they aren't starting to glaze over. Looks like Partzilla is actually responding to you, Raptor Crazy. He pulled up the YouTube video link where I did discuss what to look for on a used ATV. So thank you, whoever's monitoring us over at Partzilla. I bet I'm just making y'all cringe back at your homes, huh? John Talley, unleashed on the internet. Oh boy, God help us. All right. Roberto Riviera, hello, I would like to know how I can lower a 2009 CBR 600R in the front. Well, the way that I lowered the front of this 14, I'm not familiar with the 09 just straight off the top of my head, but basically what we did on this one is we just loosened up the clamps and let the front end drop down. I would imagine a 2009 would allow you to do that without doing any research. But what I can do is do a little research later, and then I will get back to you with the answer on that. How's that? All right, Dizzle has an 02 and an 03 Raptor 660. I'm trying to learn how to rebuild the bottom and top ends on them, and I don't know where to start. Well, we haven't done the 660, but we have done the 700, and the basic engine assembly process is going to be really similar in between the two. If you're going to go that deep into any engine, especially one as complicated as the 660 on the bottom end, you need to go ahead and get in touch with us and actually get a factory service manual, because that is going to give you turn by turn what you're going to need to do. Another great resource is you're going through this process, and I did it when I built the Raptor 700 from scratch. I printed out our entire PartSmart catalog that would show the exploded diagrams of every single section of the engine, and that's what I would reference. I would have to lay out everything on the table as that drawing would show, and then I would start putting it together, because it was just way too much for to be able to remember, especially if it's only the first or second time that you've ever built that particular engine, because each one is going to have nuances that, well, honestly, you can't make any mistakes when you're that far into an engine. It has to be right. So one, use our exploded diagrams. Two, go ahead and get you a actual OEM service manual. All right, Caesar wants to know, what ATVs do you have at home and what's your favorite brand to work on? Well, that's kind of a loaded question, but in my personal corral is actually my son's four-wheeler. He has always ridden Yamahas. We started off with a Raptor 80, went to a Raptor 250, and now he is on a YFZ450R. And I believe you've probably seen it on our channel. We actually did a top-end rebuild on it, I think about a year and a half ago. Me, as far as my ATVs, well, with age comes a cage. So I tend to stick with the side-by-sides. My personal go-to is either a Polaris Razor 900S or the Yamaha YFZ450R. Those are my favorite two. On the street bike side, I've always enjoyed the ZX-14, and I'm showing my age here. If I'm going to go for a cruise, I get on the Goldwing. So those are my personal preferences there. Okay, Tim, this is a good question. Hi, John. On the Raptor 700 piston rings, do I have to worry about ring gap on all OEM parts? The answer is yes, you do. They are OEM and they're usually dead on, but I have actually seen them be off a little bit, and they really can't be when it comes to ring gap. It is better to have too much of a gap than too little, because when that engine heats up, and if it doesn't have room to push in here, then guess what? It's going to push out, and it's going to prematurely wear your rings, and it's going to smoke when you start it up. And that's going to be a telltale sign that, oops, I didn't set my ring gap correctly. And you don't want to go through that, especially when you're going through that much time and expense to go through and rebuild an engine. Take your time, measure the gap, get it right. That way you won't have to worry about it. Okay. Tamim, can you please do a 125 two-stroke build and tutorials? Well, as you're aware, there aren't as many two-strokes out there anymore. It's kind of a dying art, so to speak. But as luck would have it, I have an older YZ450F, and the F does not stand for four-stroke, that I've been restoring over the last several years. And I actually have all the engine parts ready to go back together. And I bet you if there's enough interest, my multimedia director might let me go ahead and do that on camera for you. So we will let you know when that video happens and send you a link to it. My favorite scooter, Ulyss. Oh, I don't know if you consider it a scooter, but what I consider a scooter is that little Grom. We had a ball building that thing, and it really came alive with all the modifications we did to it. We were all sad to see it leave. I think we put 300 miles on it before we sent it off to its new owner. Hope he didn't mind. We had a little bit too much fun with that one. But take heart, we'll end up doing another one next year, I bet. Once again, go talk to my director. Her name's, no, I'm not going to tell you. But yeah, I'll tell her that y'all are requesting another scooter build. Maybe this time we'll do a Ruckus or a Monkey. All right, what else do we have? I'm looking at getting spending some money here. 2020 or 2021 YFZ450R. Would it be okay to upgrade the cams, intake and exhaust, plus put a full FMF exhaust on when purchasing, or should I wait till after the break-in? If you're going to run a machine at that level, basically the only thing that you would be breaking in would be the bottom end. And personally, I probably would go ahead and do that. Go ahead and run the engine as it is from the factory. Let the bike kind of get settled in, and then do your top end work on it. And that's just a personal preference. But yes, I'd go ahead and run it at stock first, and then do the modifications, 15, 20, 25 hours later, once it's really gotten settled in. What was the hardest engine rebuild I've ever done? Whew. Probably the first R1 that I ever built from scratch, and that was, oh good grief, 9, 10 years ago, somewhere in there. That one, it demanded a lot of attention. Yamaha, especially with that particular engine, how precise it is. The tolerances are just so small. It took some time to get it right. But that motor is still out there and running, so I can feel proud about that. Oh, Tamim wants to know if there's any way to contact me for assistance. Well, as I say at the end of every video, if you leave me a question in the comments below, I'll do my best to answer it. That's typically where we funnel all the questions that actually go to me, is through the different YouTube channels, or the YouTube channel itself. So that's really the best way to get to me. What my director's trying to tell me something else. Let me see it. Oh, and he's saying if we don't answer on the YouTube channel, you can direct your questions over to our Facebook page. And the person that runs that, when he comes up on something that he can't answer, that's when he brings me in and just say, hey, send this over to John. I want to get this straight to him, and I'll take a look at it. You happy now? All right, Devin was asking about another 02 400EX, about the bad ticking noise. Once again, go take a look at your valves, make sure that they're adjusted correctly, and you want to do that when the machine is cold and not warm, and definitely want to adjust down to the lower tolerance of the scale. Devin also asked, some people says it could be the cam. Is that possible? I kind of doubt it, because you're actually adjusting the valves when they're not even, or the rockers aren't even touching the cam. They're actually on the back side of the lobe. So I would kind of doubt that, unless somebody had or not adjusted them correctly and then damaged the valves themselves. I mean the cam itself. Oh, looking at an older one here. This is from RJIV Halo. Hello, I'm going to take a look at a 1987 TRX 250R. Cool. Tomorrow. It is all stock and hasn't been used in quite a while. Is there anything I should look for in particular? Well, I just want to make sure that she's not leaking anywhere from down below, because it is an older machine. If you have a compression tester, bring it out there and do a quick compression test, see how much is still left in that box. That was probably one of my favorite machines growing up. So, and if you found one that's stock, that is an unusual find. Snap it up. If not, send me a message. I may go get it myself. So what else y'all got for me, guys? All right, Bradley's sending a question. For the other viewers that want to get into this line of work, would you recommend them to MMI or try to get local experience? Not everyone has access to funds to attend MMI. MMI is a great source and a great way to get a lot of knowledge quickly to break into the industry, in a relatively short period of time. I was actually, Daniel, I'm not going to answer that. I was actually fortunate enough to work with a really ace mechanic when I was much younger, and that was way before MMI ever came around. So if you can work under somebody just as their apprentice, I mean, that would be great. If not, then you can consider going to MMI. And I know it does have a cost associated with that, but the short period of time and the amount of knowledge that they are able to cram into your head, it may be the most cost-effective way for you to do it. And Daniel, all right, I'll answer you. It's in the center. Go back and watch the movie. It's in the center, and that's all I'm going to say. Any engines you would recommend to practice on to get better? Anything air-cooled, any of the older TRX engines, the Recon 250, the TRX 250, just the regular four-stroke, the Rancher 350. I mean, they're everywhere. They're really simple to work on. You're not having to work with the cooling system or any of the different cooling lines. And it's got all your basic operations there, and they're very forgiving, so that would be the ones I would start with. All right, guys. Yeah, miss you too. All right, guys. Well, I think we're going to wrap it up for right now. And this has gone pretty well, so I would imagine that the management team for the multimedia department is going to request that I do this again, especially since we're all sequestered away in our different little garages and houses and apartments and whatnot. Well, listen, we just want to say thank you for spending a little bit of time and checking out our channel, and thank you especially if you were shopping with us at the Partzilla.com website. And believe me, we are doing the best that we can to get all the packages out with a reduced staff, because we are having to take into account this virus and trying to keep our employees safe and keep them healthy. So if you would bear with us and be understanding if your package takes just a little bit longer to get to you. Once again, we just want to say thank you and enjoy doing this, and I'm sure we're going to do it again, and we will put out a link or a notification on the date and time of the next event. Y'all have a good Friday, and I will talk to you soon. Y'all have a great day.